What's up? I recently came back from Toronto, and as a result, I was able to get a whole bunch of new cards. And now, not only was I able to complete my ABCs and Lair of Darkness, but I was also able to make a brand new deck, Cyber Dragons. Guess you probably kind of guessed what deck profile I was gonna do just based on my playmat. But the reason I decided to make Cyber Dragons was because they're a really good anti-meta deck in the sense that they can break extra links. They are really good at countering machines, and they don't lose if just because they end up going second or losing the die roll. So without further ado, let's get into the deck profile. So to start off, you obviously play the 3 Cyber Dragons. This card is self-explanatory, is what this deck's all about. It's kind of like the Blue Eyes White Dragon of the Cyber Dragon archetype. Next up, we play the 3 Cyber Dragon Core. This card is like the Stratos of the deck. When it's normal summoned, you can add 1 Cyber spell card or trap card from your deck to your hand. And it's really helpful considering how strong and powerful all of the Cyber spell trap cards are. But it also has a secondary effect that a lot of people forget. And that secondary effect is that if it's in your graveyard and you control no monsters, while your opponent does, you can banish it from your graveyard and special summon a Cyber Dragon from your deck. And most of the time you'll be special summoning Cyber Dragon, but you can also special summon Cyber Dragon Hertz from your deck. Hertz is like a White Stone of Legend, and in the sense that if it's sent to the graveyard, you can immediately add 1 Cyber Dragon from your deck or graveyard to your hand. And since Cyber Dragon Core is treated as a Cyber Dragon while it's in the graveyard, that means if you wanted to, you can recycle a core from your graveyard, summon it next turn, and get another search. Its other effect is not as useful, but it's still something to consider, in that if Hertz is special summoned from to the field, you can activate its effect and make its level become 5. So this becomes really useful when you want to go for a rank 5 Exceed summon. Unfortunately, if these effects are hard ones per turn, in the sense that you can only choose to use 1 of these effects per turn. So if you special summon it and make it level 5, and let's say your opponent plays Dark Hole and it's destroyed, you do not get to search. And let's say you already searched with it, but then you're able to summon another one the following turn, you cannot you summon a second copy that same turn, you cannot make its level 5. So yeah, that's it about Hertz. Next up, I run 1 Cyber Dragon Vire. Vire, if I have to compare it to a card we all know more well, I would say it's like a wind-up shark for Cyber Dragons. When a Cyber Dragon monster is, or when a Cyber Dragon is special summoned to your side of the field, you can essentially special summon Veer from your hand. It's level 4, but it does not have any level manipulation abilities. But it's always good for link summon. And its second effect gives all your Cyber Dragons an extra 500 attack or defense, so making them essentially 2600. Next up, we run 3 Galaxy Soldiers. Galaxy Soldier is self-explanatory. It's like a Mermail Abyss Teus. Even though it's not an archetype, part of the Cyber Dragon archetype, it's still something really good to run. And this card, combo with hers, this is an instant 2-card combo that can get you into a Cyber Dragon Infinity. So yeah, it's really good. Next up, I run 1 Jizukiru, the Star Destroyer Kaiju. This card is the Kaiju of the deck, and the reason I run it over cards like Gamma Seal is because for this particular deck, it's searchable. Also, since it's a machine type, if you are able to summon it to your opponent's side of the field, and then say summon a Cyber Dragon, you can immediately contact fuse both of these and make a Chimera Tech Fortress. So yeah, that's really useful. And the final 3 monsters I run are 3 Drone Lockbirds. I was considering using Ash Blossom and Joyous Spring or Ghost Ogre, but unfortunately, first of all, those are a part of my ABC deck. Second of all, there's actually a really cool combo you can use with Drone Lockbird, which I'll show at the end of this video. So yeah, that's it for the monsters. Moving on to the spell cards, we have obviously 3 Cyber Emergency. This card is the new Rhoda of the deck, and it's definitely makes this deck a lot faster in the early game. Like before Emergency came out, players were stuck using cards like Cyber Repair Plant, which is only live if you have a Cyber Dragon in the graveyard, which you can only get if in like the mid game. So it's kind of like a catch-22 in that sense. But even though we have Cyber Emergency now, we still run 2 copies of Cyber Repair Plant. Again, this is like a secondary role of the game. And Cyber Emergency is better in the early game, while Cyber Repair Plant is better in the mid to late game. But it's always good to have more options. And both of these are hard ones per turns. Emergency actually has a defensive capability in the sense that if its activation was negated, you can discard a card and add it back to your hand. And since its activation was negated, that means you can only activate one of these cards' name per turn. Clause does not apply, which means you can activate it again. This means that your opponent literally does not gain anything by using cards like a Solemn Judgment to negate Cyber Emergency. However, this only applies if the activation of this card is negated. If the effect was negated by something like an Ash Blossom Joyous Spring, then you do not get the effect. And it just goes to the graveyard. Next up, we run 2 Cyber Rev System. This card, at 3 is too many, at 0 is too few, so always run between 1 to 2 copies. I'm currently running 2 copies because where I am at the time of making this video, Cyber Dragon Nachster has not yet been released. And when it does come out, though, I will probably cut one of these for Cyber Dragon Nachster. But other than being a searchable monster reborn, it also gives the Cyber Dragon you special summon back protection from card destruction via card effects. So if you summon back Cyber Dragon with Rev System, and your opponent plays something like a Torrential Tribute or Bottomless Trap Hole, they pretty much just wasted their card. Final Cyber spell card I've run in this deck is a Cyber Load Fusion. This is actually a really underrated card that I think a lot of people, they should run more often, but I see a lot of deck profiles cutting it. And I understand that sometimes in the early game it can be bricky, but in the late game, after you used up other cards like Overload Fusion or Cybernetic Overflow, this card literally just is one of the best cards you can top deck. And the thing is, if you have both this and Overload Fusion, you can play Overload Fusion, try to go for a summon, and if your opponent is able to kill it by some card effect or whatnot, you can play Cyberload Fusion, shuffle back the fusion material you banished, and essentially summon out another fusion monster. And this card is also really good if your opponent, let's say, uses Ghost Reaper to banish all your Cyber Dragon Novas, because then you can play this card, shuffle the Novas back into your extra deck, and then you also, so now you can go into Nova and Infinity again, but you also get a free Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon, just like that. Next up, we have the best spell card in the deck, 3 copies of Machine Duplication. If you open with this card and either one of Cyber Dragon Core or Cyber Dragon Hertz or Nachster when it comes out, this card basically just turns that one monster into 3, which you can then go and use and make either Exceed summons or Link summons. And at the end of this video, I'm going to show you a combo you can do with this card, and it's really cool. I definitely say that this card's the best card of this deck, and if this card ends up getting hit by the ban list, Cyber Dragons would lose like a good 30, possibly 40% of their explosiveness in the early game. Next up, 2 Overload Fusions. This card is really good, as I stated before, when it combos with Cyberload Fusion, but also in the mid to late game, if both you and your opponent are top decking, Overload Fusion is essentially a 1 card that can get you a Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon that by itself can attack for over 6,000 points of damage. And the fusion material monsters do not even need to be on the field. You can just banish them from the graveyard instead. Next up, we have 1 limiter removal for like going for games. Like, it's more of a win more card where it turns like close games wins into blowout wins, but again, you're running a machine deck, like why not? Next, we have Monster Reborn, obviously Foolish Burial, Raigeki, 1-for-1 in order to summon out the Cyber Dragon Hertz. And in this case, interestingly enough, if you discard a Hertz to summon a second Hertz from the deck, you can choose which one of the Hertz effects to use, whether you want to search or whether you want to get a level 5 out on the field. So it's really nice. Next, we run 1 Twin Twisters because, again, this deck is not afraid to discard stuff. And if you discard a Cyber Dragon, then your machine, Cyber Repair Plants and Cyber Rev systems both become live. And last spell card I've run is 1 Upstart Goblin. And Upstart Goblin turns his deck from a 40 card into a 39 card deck, so it's always good to have. And next, for the 3 trap cards, I run 2 Infinite Impermanents. I would run 3, but I only have 4 Impermanents total, and my other 2 are in my ABC deck. So yeah, and the last trap card I run is Cybernetic Overflow. This card is like a searchable Icarus attack, and I definitely say that it's something worth running. But one important ruling you should remember regarding Cybernetic Overflow is that you cannot banish a Cyber Dragon Sieger because it does not have a level. So yeah, that's it with the main deck. Onto the extra deck. Okay, so to start off with the Link monsters, we're on 1 Nightmare Griffin and Summon Sorceress. These 2 are part of the combo. Also run Cyber Dragon Sieger, the Link monster that Cyber Dragons got recently last year. Cleaver Genius, another machine type monster, a Link monster, and Link Karibo because it's again like a 1-for-1 into it, and you can, even if you open Cyber Dragon Hertz and nothing to discard, you can just summon Hertz, link it to Link Karibo, and then search with it. That way you get essentially a free Link Karibo on board, and if you have Cyber Repair Plant or Rev systems in your hand, those cards automatically unbreak as well. For the Xyz, I run 2 Cyber Dragon Infinities. This is hands down the best boss monster of this deck. It's essentially, it has a Silent Honor arc effect combined with a Shooting Quasar Dragon effect. And essentially, once per turn, whenever your opponent tries to activate any card effect or effect, you can immediately just like deny them that. But because most decks these days, they can play around it, as they can just try to bait out the effect. Make sure you only use this effect to negate the most important stuff. Essentially, what I'm saying is that know what to use your Cyber Dragon Infinity negates on. Cyber Dragon Nova. This card used to be like the go-to boss monster for Cyber Dragons, but recently it's after the release of Infinity, Nova became just a stepping stone. But one of its effects that I see many people forget is that it can actually special summon Cyber Dragons from the graveyard. And that's definitely something I think is worth considering. Next, for the Xyz, 1 Artifact Durandal. This card is what you combo with Droll and Lockbird in order to make your opponent lose their entire hand. And I'm going to show you how it's done a bit later. So now, the Fusion monster, you run 2 Mega Fleet Dragons. These cards are essentially the board breakers of the deck. If your opponent has an extra link to you, or has a monster in their extra zone, you can just summon your Cyber Dragon and immediately like contact fuse with their extra deck monster. And this is non-targeting, non-destruction removal. And it doesn't matter if their monster is unaffected by card effects, you will still tribute their monster essentially as cost. And on the concept of tributing, like a contact fusing for cost, also run 1 Fortress Dragon. This card's mainly in there because, first of all, the mirror match. Second of all, if I face off against the machine deck, essentially, and they spam out a huge board of machine monsters, I can literally just turn their entire field into something that ends up benefiting me. So, yeah, Fortress Dragon is really good. And last 2 cards I run, 2 Chimera Tech Rampage Dragon. This card is amazing. Essentially, when you summon it by Fusion Summon, you can like pop your opponent's spell trap cards and their back row up to the number of fusion material monsters used for its Fusion Summon. And it requires 2+ Cyber Dragon monsters, so even monsters like Cyber Dragon Infinity and Cyber Dragon Nova could qualify to make the recipe. And its second effect allows it to essentially be used as a double Foolish Burial. So if you wanted, you could essentially mill a Hertz and a core to the graveyard, and then activate Hertz's effect to add the core back to your hand. But in addition to being a double Foolish Burial, it also gains an additional attack for every monster you milled. So essentially, this means that if you mill 2 monsters, it can attack 3 times. And considering its 2,100 attack, it by itself can attack for 6,300 damage. And under Cyber Dragon Seizure, you can use Seizure to pump the Chimera Tech Rampage to 4,200 damage attack, and then attack 3 times, and that's over 12,000 damage. Like, even if your opponent has a few monsters in attack mode, or like to guard their life points, this card will most likely still be able to attack over them and hit your opponent for game. So yeah, this card is really good when going for game. So now I'm going to show you a few combos you could use with this deck. For the first, this combo, you obviously need 1 Cyber Dragon Core, 1 Machine Duplication, and 1 Rev System or Monster Reborn. So either one of these works, but let's say you open Monster Reborn. First, you'll summon Cyber Dragon Core, activate its effect, searching Rev System to your hand. Then you'll play the Machine Duplication, and this time you're going to special summon 2 Cyber Dragons from your deck. So now that you have 2 Cyber Dragons, you're going to link these 2 away into your Cyber Dragon Seizure. Let's see if I can find that. Into your Cyber Dragon Seizure into the extra zone. And then you're going to link these 2 away. So now this is your graveyard. You're going to go into Summon Sorceress. At this point, it doesn't matter. You can play either Monster Reborn or Rev System. But say you play Monster Reborn and reborn, say, a Cyber Dragon to this zone. Then you will use Summon Sorceress effect on Cyber Dragon and special summon a second Cyber Dragon from your deck. And since you have 2 level 5s, you will overlay these 2. Let's see if I can do this right. For Cyber Dragon Nova. Then you activate Nova's effect to detach 1 Cyber Dragon to the graveyard. And since Seizure is also treated as Cyber Dragon in the graveyard, you can special summon Seizure. Then you activate Cyber Rev System to special summon. It doesn't matter. Any one of these monsters would do. Let's say you summon Cyber Dragon. Then you link these 2 away into your Nightmare Griffin. And if you have any cards at your hand that you're willing to discard right now, now will be the time to do it. And if you do, you can essentially set your Monster Reborn, which you used, back onto the field. But let's say you don't do anything, and you don't draw any cards as a result. So at this point, you will be able to overlay and go into another Xyz and go into Cyber Dragon Infinity. And the reason why this board is really good is because, first of all, Griffin prevents all special summon monsters from using their effects unless they're linked. But be careful with Griffin because its effect does actually negate its own effect if you use it incorrectly. So now your Cyber Dragon Infinity and Seizure are both linked to Griffin, and any special summon monsters your opponent tries to put out will not be linked by default, so they cannot activate their on-field effects. But then you can, if they do use a spell or trap card, you can use Infinity to negate it, and if they summon a monster has really high attack points, you can use Seizure to bump the Infinity up. So this board is really hard to break. So on to the next card, next combo. This is the Droll and Lockbird combo, and again, you're going to be requiring Cyber Dragon Core and Machine Dupe. So this time you're going to summon Cyber Dragon Core and activate its effect to search Cyber Rev System. Play Machine Duplication to special summon, obviously, the 2 Cyber Dragons. This time you're just going to link with these 2, go into a Cyber Dragon Seizure up here. Now you're going to use Rev System to special summon back the Cyber Dragon, and then overlay these 2 for the Artifact Durandal. And in this case, if you have a Droll and Lockbird in hand, let's say your opponent on their turn, they activate a card that adds something to hand, you can activate Durandal's effect as Chainlink 1 to make them shuffle their entire hand back into their deck. And since you're still responding to them adding a card to hand, you can activate Droll and Lockbird as Chainlink 2, and in this case, they won't be able to add any cards to their hand, including drawing. So Artifact Durandal, at this point, it will force them to shuffle their entire hand back into the deck, and it will attempt to make them draw the same number of cards, but since Droll and Lockbird was active, that means your opponent cannot add any card to their hand, including drawing. So essentially, you just got rid of their entire hand. And even though it does also prevent you from drawing your cards as well, and you have 2 monsters on the field, and your opponent has nothing on the field, and all their cards are back in the deck. So their field is empty, their graveyard is empty, their hand is empty, and essentially next turn, it essentially just moves you your turn next. In which case, if you draw a monster or a cyber emergency, you can immediately switch everything to attack mode and just proceed to OTK your opponent from there. And now the last combo I'm going to show you is another 2-card OTK combo. And it's going to involve, you guessed it, Cyber Dragon Core and Machine Duplication. So you're going to summon Cyber Dragon Core, activate Machine Dupe, and special summon your 2 Cyber Dragons again. And Cyber Dragon Core will search you your Cyber Rev systems. So you're going to link with these 2 and go into Seizure again. And you're going to activate Rev systems to summon back the linked away Cyber Dragon. Next, you're going to overlay these 2. This time, you're going to go into Nova. And at this point, you should have a Cyber Dragon in the core in the graveyard. And since you have a legal target in the graveyard at this point, you can activate Nova's effect. And then at this point, when you select the target, you target Cyber Dragon, summon it back. And now you enter your battle phase. You attack with Cyber Dragon, and you attack with Cyber Dragon Nova. At this point, you activate Nova's effect, banishing the Cyber Dragon. So it's now a 4,200 attack. And then you change Siege's effect to make it give it another 2,100 attack. So now it's at 6,300, and in addition to the 2,100 damage from Cyber Dragon, this 2-card combo will hit your opponent for a grand total of 8,400 damage. And even if they're somehow still alive, because let's say you played your Upstart Goblin or something like that, Upstart Goblin to give them an extra 1,000 life points, you still have this combo to fall back on and just go into Cyber Dragon Infinity. So if they try to play something, you can negate it, and they try to run over your Infinity by battle, you can use Seizure to pump it. So yeah. Now, finally, I'd like to talk about some good side deck options for this card. Right now, my side deck is a work in progress, but since this is a going second deck, you can definitely consider side decking Evenly Matched. And this card essentially is completely busted in the sense that it's basically a board wipe that doesn't discriminate against spells or traps or monsters. Other options include Winged Dragon Raw Sphere mode if you really want to break your opponent's boards. And cards that run to counter Evenly Matched include like Artifact Lancia. This card is it's a situational card, but under the right situations, it can completely prevent your opponent from giving you the board wipe or Evenly Matched treatment. And finally, other cards you can consider running are Dino Wrestler Pancratops. This card, it's like a Cyber Dragon in the sense that you can summon it if your opponent controls more monsters, but it has a secondary effect that lets you tribute it to pop 1 card your opponent controls as a quick effect. So yeah, that's definitely something to consider. So yeah, thanks for watching, and subscribe to my channel for more interesting content, as I will definitely be uploading my ABC deck next.